What's up? So, I've been doing a lot of experimenting with EmuFlight, trying to take it to the next level and try to see if I could get the most out of it for racing purposes. EmuFlight, it seems to be more catered towards freestyle and cinematic flying. It's very smooth, and that's also why I want it for racing. It's very, very smooth, very well tracking without having to deal with RPM filtering or CPU intensive type stuff. It's very, very easy and simple to get a very, very smooth and locked in quad. So my setup, this is my current setup, the 533 Switchback, very popular racer frame right now, heads up a racing frame. This is probably the lightest build I've ever been able to achieve, which is at 260 grams without the battery. So it is a nimble little thing. What I have running on it is the Talon F7 MPU6000. So it's very basic gyro, but I want to see how far I can push like kind of cheaper low-end gear. Being that we crash these things all the time, if the performance can get away with using lesser gear, the better. So we have the Talon F7 MPU6000 gyro, HobbyWing 20x20 ESC. My ESC settings are auto timing. The DMAG is set to low or off, and PWM frequency at 48, and it's just BL-Heli32. It's not even like JESC or anything like that. Locked in, no desyncing. These motors are F40 Pro 2s at 2150 kV. My motor output limit is set to 90, and that's about it. I just kind of capped the top end, and it runs fantastic, and no hot motors or anything. So let me show you guys the way I have this thing set up. Let's get EmuFlight going. So the way that I have my configuration set up, I run props reverse. I have 8K, which I can get away with. The accelerometer as well. And yeah, look at my CPU load. It's really, really low. I have no anti-gravity, no dynamic filter. And that's basically the main thing. The motor idle, I brought that up just a little bit, and yeah, pretty basic. Other than that, if we go to our PID tuning, well, before I go to PID tuning, I'll show you my receiver setup. So on the RC smoothing part, I just have it on interpolation, manual, and at 15 with crossfire, which is what I'm running. Seems to have no issues here. PID tuning. So from default, I've tuned my PIDs down because of how light and powerful this thing is. I have what would look like lower PIDs, but they're actually just right for this quad. I'm running a small amount of feed forward that seems to give it that last little bit of a kick to get to set point. My main feed forward, as it were, is coming from the EmuBoost, and I have these values cranked up from defaults as well. The iDecay I used to have at 7, default is 4. I've kind of settled on 6. I find that I like it a little bit better for it to not release the wind up so quickly. It's just the right balance, but it's just a preference thing. And yeah, so that's how I have this set up. And then for the TPA, this is the most important thing here. This is my own custom TPA from default. I have this working with my PID values just right for this build. So take this with a grain of salt as well. You might need to adjust. The SPA values, these were brought in by default in this current build that I'm running, which is 0.2.28. These were on by default, and they did not affect my my prior tune, and it felt just way better. So I just left this alone. I didn't even touch this. And the quad fly is fantastic. So I got that set up. Here's where the main magic is. I've tuned the low pass filters up. I can get away with more on this gyro low pass. I can get away with 150. By the time I get to like 180 or 200, the quad starts to want to take off on arm. But this is like just the right sweet spot. I think even at 150 it was really awesome, but it was just, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's too raw. But having it brought just right about there, and it's kind of more of a feel thing because I'm not looking at the black box data. I'm kind of more like feeling it out, and I bring it up by 10-point increments and then kind of bring it down and see what's feeling more like it's where it's supposed to be. And the way that I was able to tell to bring it to 120 is if I would go higher, it felt even more sharper, but it almost felt sharp in a negative way. Like, it was almost like my own worst enemy, because it wasn't like hitting, I guess, set point exactly, or that's how I could describe it. I don't know what the black box logs would show, but once I had settled on 120, it seemed to work really, really nice. Same here on the D-term low pass. I just have just the one, and I had it at 100 before, and which is fine. And then I went to 150, even better. And then I went to 200, and it was almost like too good, like scary good. So I just decided to bump it back down to 90, just to kind of keep things a little bit not from peak tune. The W here, I have it at 16, very responsive. And then with the Q values bumped up, it's like extra sharp. I could even have these at 8,000, but I think that 7,000 is kind of conservative. The idea being I could crank these numbers up even higher, but I just kind of leave them slightly conservative, to leave some room for maybe like a bent prop or some kind of a damage during a race. I don't want to smoke something that easily, but I still want to have some pretty awesome performance. So with the filtering being this low, which is like the Q values and the W values, and then you have like this and this, it's so locked in and so like direct. It's pretty awesome. So I'm gonna go ahead and fly it for you guys so you can hear it and see how it works. But I'm also going to show you how the defaults that I have turned off were also really, really great. It's just that I found that for racing, having them off was a little bit better. But those defaults also did a lot to kill a lot of noise and kind of smooth things out just that extra bit. So having them on would not hurt, but like bringing them down or turning them off made the performance even just that much more direct. So I'll show you that here, what I did, which is it's in the CLI. So I'm going to do diff, and then I'm going to show you guys here. So the D-term smoothing was at 50, and that just killed so much D-term noise, and it sounds so good. I'm going to do a second flight with that on 50, which is the default. I found that under extreme maneuvers, and being that my PIDs are kind of like, especially my Ds are already kind of low, I think it might have been causing some adverse effects. But it was very rare, but it would happen. Like I would make a turn and I would, flick the roll, and it would like not really lock in. It would just kind of flip and do this kind of weird, like release, like it wouldn't grip on the turn. And other than that, which would only happen every now and then, it's just fantastic, so smooth. I would definitely use it for freestyle and cinematics. I would use D-term smoothing. It really works its magic when you go for like full throttle, or go like for like, I guess, like mid throttle and cruising. It's really awesome for like those kind of like, I guess, mid-throttle oscillations and that kind of thing. So for now, for racing, I'm just going to turn that off. I want just this raw directness that the D-term smoothing kind of just takes away some of that. The other thing that was added, it was the gyro averaging, which by default is at 3. The gyro averaging did nothing to, I guess, help or hurt. By default, it didn't bother me at all, but I found that with tuning the low pass filter and cranking that up, I was able to get better performance by turning off the gyro averaging. So I just set them at 0. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'm gonna do this first flight where you get to see the tune at what is my preference and at its what I consider its peak performance. And then I'm gonna turn on the GA and the D-term smoothing to its default values and then fly it again so that you can hear how clean and smooth it sounds and how well it still performs. Fantastic. But just to kind of give you an idea of like the difference in the sound and everything. So yeah, let's go take this out on the field and fly it out. So let me show you guys how this sounds. Let's take it for a spin. So yeah, pretty fucking sick. Cold, not even hot. Beautiful. Okay, so I have plenty of room for some more black box data. So what I'm going to do is what I mentioned earlier. I'm going to turn on some defaults. So we're going to go to the CLI, Smart Smoothing. So I'm going to set the Smart Smoothing to 50, which was the default. Save. Okay, so so basically all I did was leave everything the way I had it except for Smart Smoothing and Gyro Averaging. I put those back to default. Smart Smoothing at 50, Gyro Averaging at 3. There should be no really like negative effects, but and it should sound better. But let's just find out and see what the black box logs say. Okay, so we're gonna set This one is set up with the default D-term smoothing at 50 and gyro averaging at 3 on all axes. That actually didn't sound as clean as I thought it would. Before, when I had my gyro low pass filter at about 100, it was probably better. So let's just try changing the gyro low pass filters to the values where it did sound good. Performance wise, it still flew really great. Sound wise and maybe sharpness wise, with the D-term smoothing set to 1 and gyro averaging to 0, I feel is a little better. But let's go ahead and try to bring the low pass filters down and seeing if that helps with some of that. So I'm going to go into the OSD. I normally just do a reboot because it just makes sure that it saves it. Sometimes I've had it not save. I don't know. Not really better. I think before it even performed better. Before I tuned down the low pass filters. So I think where I had it was just right. Regardless of having the gyro averaging or D-term smoothing, that's where I needed to be. Yeah, for now I prefer D-term smoothing off and gyro averaging off as well. But they're, I think, valuable to have for a default build, maybe something that needs to cover all the bases. I do think that at least the
the D-term smoothing is a pretty valuable tool to have. You can always tune it down, and for the experts that have a lot of experience, like myself, just tune that down to get more of what I'm looking for that a novice may not even know anything about yet. So awesome. EmuFlight, good things.